It's the Age Has No Limit podcast. We're here to show and prove that your age shouldn't prevent you from designing and living the life you want. I'm your host, Patrice Davis. Let's get started. Welcome to the Age Has No Limit podcast. With me today is Brenda Bailey. Brenda B. Bailey is known as Your Mindset and Strategy Accelerator. She has 13 Integrative Healing certifications and operated a seven-figure business and has been an entrepreneur for 32 years. Brenda is a ThetaHealing Master and Instructor who is also a full-time ThetaHealing Practitioner, Instructor, and Coach, which she's been doing for 16 years. She blends her practical experience as a successful entrepreneur along with her integrative healing practices that allow people to have quick transformations in her Elevate to Accelerate, really love that, and of course her SRC4U program. So we're going to find out what that acronym means. Brenda's work in the world is to help you break down the barriers, to help you heal and get into your true zone of genius. Serve the people who need your gifts, of course, and of course, make lots of money doing it. And who doesn't want to do that? Brenda, welcome to the Age Has No Limit podcast.
Thank you. And, I have to laugh because I'm going, do I have the wrong years here? Because I have been an entrepreneur for 32 years and I've actually been a theta healer. I'm coming on to 20 years. So wow. I apologize. I gave you the wrong number, apparently. So that's on me. It's not on Patrice, guys, just to let you know.
That's all right. Thank you. Then we're going to actually jump into exactly what that is in a few minutes. But I have so many questions for you as I was visiting your website, reading your bio, learning what I can about you, and just really, really happy that you're our newest guest. So I've been thinking a lot about forgiveness. And especially self-forgiveness, because I realize I can forgive others a lot easier than I can forgive myself. And then I also realize, oh, by the way, there is something or certain things you need to forgive yourself for. So tell the audience about the importance of forgiveness and how they can achieve freedom from what really bogs them down about forgiving others and even themselves.
Oh, that's such a good question, because I think it's a question that a lot of people don't even, or it's a subject that most people don't even address. I think maybe people go to therapy or they go to church and they pray. And I'm not saying that that's not good stuff. It is good stuff. Don't get me wrong. But I think that as humans, just like Patrice said, we forgive everyone else, including whoever you believe to be your higher power, whoever that is. I happen to call mine God, right? But however you address whoever you feel like is you're co-creating with here in this world. We sometimes, we forgive all the humans. We forgive all the physical beings. Sometimes we forget about God or whoever you address God. And always we forget about ourselves. And anytime we do any forgiveness, this has been my experience in my life, as well as a practitioner of 20 years, is if we have to forgive somebody else, we typically have to forgive ourselves.
Yeah.
And we just do, because and there are a lot of things that we as humans just make it our fault, right? That you just have to forgive yourself for that, even though maybe it's not true. Yeah. But if it's true for you, that's also what needs to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I love the saying, and when I heard it the first time, it hit so close to home, that resentment, which is non-forgiveness, resentment is a poison that we drink and expect the other person to die.
Never heard that one. Really
right? I love it because it's so true. I will often have clients tell me they'll tell me about, some experiences of their life or work life or school or whatever. And I'll be like, well, maybe we should forgive that person, right? Because you can do it so quickly and easily with theta healing, which I know we'll come to that. We'll come back around to that. And they'll be like, no, that person doesn't deserve forgiveness. And I'm like, well, forgiveness is not for them. Because I promise you, they probably haven't had a second thought about this and are moving on in their life fine. Absolutely. But it's affecting you.
Yeah.
Is why you need to forgive them. Yeah. It's not about them. Yeah. It's about you. Forgiveness is always to support you, to balance you.
Yeah. Thanks for making that very clear. And I do want to make sure that you all are aware, stick around because we're going to share in details about how you can get her Freedom Through Forgiveness workbook and audios. So just that's why I just want to make sure we start out there, because it's so important for us to realize that we also have to forgive ourselves. And also, as she said, forgiveness is about you sort of relieving yourself of that, resentment. So, that's
Of that burden. It becomes a burden
Yeah.
that you carry when you
Absolutely.
don't forgive somebody. And I'm not saying that what happened wasn't bad, or that I feel like that sometimes people think that if they forgive, that the other person gets off the hook, or what happened wasn't a big deal. No, the worse it is, the more you got to do it so that it isn't controlling life.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And your business. You're an entrepreneur. It's not only going to control your life, it's going to control your business.
Well, I definitely want to pick up on that. I was actually going to go and ask you another question, but let's pick up on that last point that, it actually controls your life and your business. Tell me some ways that it shows up in a person's business.
Well, if we don't forgive ourselves, there's always that fear. As an entrepreneur, been doing it 32 years. Let me tell you, I have a long list of mistakes that I've made, poor choices that I've made. And I've often said that every mistake, every poor choice is based on a reaction. And what happens is when we have non-forgiveness, when we have resentment, we do a lot of action on reaction. Either freeze you. It'll freeze you so you'll be in fear of making the same mistake, because then you won't trust yourself.
Yeah.
And I apologize. I know my internet goes through this in and out of instability. I live in a small town up in the Pacific Northwest, guys. Sorry.
I thought it was us, but I
control over it. I don't know if it's that I need to stand on my head sometimes or what happens, but it happens. So if we miss something, just let me know. I will repeat it. But
we'll just keep it going.
Yeah, we just keep that energy of the fear, or we keep the energy of the distrust. And especially when we don't forgive ourselves, it's just even on a subconscious level, then you start to question yourself. You start to distrust yourself. You don't trust your intuition, because that's also when we're in that reactionary mode and that resentment, we don't listen to ourselves. We don't listen to our knowing.
Yeah.
And also when we don't forgive, we stay in our head a lot.
Yeah.
And instead of being, again, in our knowing, in our intuition, and that's not in our head. People always say, oh, I'm a thinker. And I'm like, well, that keeps you stuck sometimes. Then you'll also, in that non-forgiveness, especially if you make a mistake, like in your business, then you're overthinking it. You're making sure. So it doesn't, and you block. We were just talking, Patrice and I were just talking about, before we started this, that, making an intention, saying it out loud, what we want.
Yes. Yeah.
That allows the universe, God, whoever, right, and other people to understand how they can support us, what opportunities can come our way. But when we're in that fear, when we're in resentment, when we're in our head, we block it so much. Those miracles, the magic, all of that.
Great point. Great point. That's an excellent, excellent point, that we're blocking everything and we're not in our knowing, because we're so in our heads about that thing that we're mulling about and
it loops. We all know these things. We have these things that we play over and over, especially if it's something that needs to be forgiven. We're playing it over and over to put that accountability or whatever, or being that victim of what happened.
Yeah, yeah. And so, guys, this kind of lends to the next question, and I think we probably already see some evidence of it. Why are you considered a mindset and strategy accelerator?
Because I do not work with the mind. That's the thing. That's the big mistake that people do, is that they're like, oh, I need to change my mindset. So they change their mind. But here's the deal. The mind follows the subconscious. The mind follows us cellularly. So with Theta Healing, what we do is we actually make changes that bypass the conscious and subconscious mind, because all of our trauma, all of our non-forgiveness, all of our beliefs that we've either inherited or we've had something happen in this lifetime that it's like we have this belief, like maybe you were crossing a bridge and there was like an earthquake or something and it shook. And so that now you have a fear of bridges, right? Like, or, crossing bridges, right? It was the one thing and you have the fear. It's like that becomes a belief for you, that bridges are unsafe for you. Or, certain, I had a redheaded teacher when I was in second grade. And so I distrust redheads, but you're not aware of it consciously. But it's in our DNA, it's in our cells. So what Theta Healing does is it bypasses the mind and makes the changes on a cellular level that allows the heart and mind to follow.
Got it. Wow. Okay. Wow. And so it's interesting that you say that, because, one of the things that I've been hearing a lot, one of the words I've been hearing quite a bit over the past several years is mindset. And of course, the word mindset has been around for some time, and there have always probably been communities that talked about it, but it's definitely become a more popular term. And it's been a buzzword. So how do you describe one's mindset, knowing what you know and explaining what you explained about you work within, or you go beyond actually the subconscious? Why is a person's mindset important? And is it important when, in fact, you're working with what's below the mind, or, what causes the mind to, I guess, do or think or operate the way that it does?
We have to be because most people as humans, right? I'm like going, it's not like just you, it's not just me, it's everyone. What we know is what we think is what we do. And so we feel like that what we need to change is how we think.
Yeah.
So that we do things differently. That is exhausting.
Yes.
And again, it takes up so much room. It energetically just takes up room. And so again, nothing else can happen, nothing else, because the mind is so focused on that. So when you actually clear the mind, not make it in charge, things can be so much easier. It's just that it's a very unknown concept. Which is why I love to be on podcasts like Patrice's to just make you an awareness, because I believe that knowledge is power. Absolutely. So I'm not trying to convince you. It's like, think on what I'm saying and go, I never thought about that. Just like what Patrice is doing, or and what ends up happening a lot of times, and I feel like that people who are consultants or coaches or have programs, I always say that nobody creates something like that thinking people are going to fail at it. When you talk to people and they're being honest, usually about only 25% of their clients, and it's smaller than that, I'm just being generous, closer to 10, just saying, have success with them. And it has nothing to do with the person, it has nothing to do with the program. It has to do with the mindset of their people that they're working with, of their clients, of their customers, however you address them. So when you a lot of times what I also do as well, Patrice, is I will go and I will be, a adjunct, consultant or instructor or whatever you want to call it, that I go into people's programs, because I always say, if you want to have great success and you're in what you do, stay in your lane.
Yeah. Absolutely.
If you don't know mindset, then don't offer it to your clients. Like don't say that it's part of your program. And I'll do that sometimes. I was actually in a program and we had to meet like everybody in the group, right? Like everybody that was part of the program, people who were all the members. So I just did, and it ended up with our conversations. People would be like, oh, I have this 90-minute intro session for people to understand what's possible with Theta Healing. And usually it's a one and done typically with people.
Oh, really?
And it's what I've been working on that, it's what I'm known for. And so a lot of people would say to me, oh, I can I have your 90-minute session? I was like, well, we were just supposed to be meeting, right? Like we were just supposed to be connecting. I wasn't really trying to sell you on anything or anything like that. And so I asked the person who was over the, whose program it was, are you okay that people want to do this 90-minute intro session with me? Because I'm not here to market myself. I'm here to, I'm here to be a part of the program. So I just want to make sure, have clear boundaries and make sure that, we're okay with it. She was like, oh, I know ThetaHealing. No, please go ahead. And what was really interesting is I would tell her, not tell her about the sessions or anything, but I would just let her know who had worked with me in her program, right? Just she would know.
Yeah.
It was all the people who were showing up. All of a sudden, they were showing up. They were implementing the program. They were having success. They were happy with where they were at. And it was such a great, this was, years ago. And it was such a great example of for somebody to understand, like, why do I want mindset to be a component of what I offer my clients? And why would I want it done with an easy modality, with an easy technique? And for myself, because I've worked a lot in mainstream, I mean, that's my background, mainstream, right? It's not like I'm not, one of those that we light the candles, and not that there's anything wrong with that, because
I get it. No, I get it. Yeah,
like that. But a lot of people, that's not their comfort, right? So I meet them where they're at, and we just, I can present myself and be able to work with people because I do have an entrepreneurial background. I have been in business. I do understand what it takes to be a business owner. I know the journey of an entrepreneur. I know the pain of the entrepreneur. I often say, if you want to know what you need to work on, start a business.
Brenda, those were some excellent points. And there are a few things in there I definitely want to come back to. I do, though, want to find out more about Brenda Bailey, the person. Brenda, please tell us, tell the listeners where you're from. I know you say you currently live in the Pacific Northwest, but, if you're, tell us a little bit more about you and your childhood, anything that you'd like to share.
Well, I'm originally from San Antonio, Texas, and I actually just relocated here to the Pacific Northwest 6 months ago.
Oh,
so
wow.
I did not live in San Antonio my whole life. Pretty much did what I think most people do. Went to college, got a job outside of San Antonio, and then I worked in corporate America for about 7 years. And my sister kiddingly said, or she didn't kiddingly, she said to me, like, when are you going to stop making everybody else a lot of money?
Yeah.
And I was like, and she's like, you really need to work for yourself.
Yeah. Wow.
I was like, and I have one sister, she's one of my greatest support, people and cheerleaders. And that's what started it all. I had moved out of San Antonio and actually stayed there. I actually moved back after being gone for 25 years. Now, please understand, I come from I have a huge Hispanic family in San Antonio. My mom was like one of 7 kids, so I have tons of cousins. Nobody ever leaves there.
Yeah.
So it's not like, so it's pretty unusual. I kiddingly say my sister and I, we have traveled a lot and lived in a lot of other places. And one cousin who was in the military, right, for 25 years. So I was gone for 25 years and then came back. But of course, it came for visits and holidays and all that. I just didn't live there. Because a fun fact about San Antonio, it is the 7th largest city in the U.S.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, it's huge.
Yeah.
Of course, we got big cities in Texas.
Yes.
But it's the biggest small town you'll ever visit or live in. It's a very slow pace for such a big city. So of course I couldn't wait to leave it when I was going off to college, right? Like I couldn't wait to get out because I just thought it was so slow and so, right. But I could definitely appreciate it when I came back 25 years later and was older and could enjoy that slow pace. So I've been married, I've been divorced, I have no children. I pretty much have been a workaholic the first part of my life.
Okay.
And as I say, I sold my soul for 7 figures with my first career, which I actually lived in a small town in East Texas and would commute to the airport 3 hours away because I had a business where I actually did trade show sales at a trade show sales company. So I traveled all over the US, including Hawaii and Alaska.
Oh, wow.
There are only 2 states that I haven't been to.
Oh, wow.
Of all of them. And so I've traveled, I've been everywhere. People kiddingly before the internet called me, a restaurant guide of the US because I could tell you where to go of the major cities.
Yeah.
And I've lived all over Texas. I've traveled all over the US. I've lived in different parts of the US as well. I seem to like northwest corners of states. So I lived in Northwest Arkansas. I live in Northwest Washington now. And that's pretty much it. So right now it's just me. And I have a 6-year-old cat named Lammy.
Oh, you're a cat person. You're a cat
I'm a
person.
cat and dog person.
Yeah, and a dog person. Yes, 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 yes. Now, so you said something that I definitely want to pick back up on. You said that if you want to find out what you need to address, what you need to fix, start a business. And that's so true. Because it forces you to be vulnerable because you're challenged in ways that you've never been challenged before. You're also vulnerable because you realize you don't have all the answers. You may be a know-it-all about your previous occupation. You may be a know-it-all about being a mother, not a know-it-all, but you may feel comfortable.
You knowledgeable, right?
Knowledgeable, right? But when you have a business, it really does expose some raw areas, some areas that you're not aware of. So if you can,
it's not just in what you don't know.
Exactly.
It's also in how you sense things, how you feel about things, how you for me, I did trade shows for a living, which meant that I talked to people usually 3 to 4 days a week, or usually 3, but sometimes I do a longer show here or there. So I was out like in these crowds of people and I had no idea that I was an introvert.
Oh,
I'm
really?
an introvert, right? But I can, or maybe an ambivert,
Yeah.
I always think that when people hear introverts that they think that they're people that are socially awkward or
Yeah.
socially inept, and
They're not. They're
come
not.
from a big family like I did and not be,
Yeah.
and especially the city that I come from, because we have parades and fiestas and,
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff. So I know how to be around people. It's just that that's not what feeds me, so to speak, right? I always say people always like, oh no, because I'm friendly and I can have a conversation. And I'm like, no, I am an introvert because if I'm in a big crowd or if I do something, then I need to go home and recharge.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting.
If it feeds your energy,
Yeah.
then you're an extrovert. If it makes you feel, if it takes away from your energy. And then I also feel like that people don't realize how much of an empath they are, right? Which means that you feel other people's feelings, their thoughts, and it's hard to distinguish what are yours. I always have to laugh. Sometimes I'm on these summits and stuff, and somebody will say, I'm an empath. Like they make this announcement, I'm an empath, and I'm like, well, you and everybody else in the world, right?
I know.
Different degrees, right? So it's not anything. And a lot of times, it affects us energetically in how we can be.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not realize it. Like if you're working with clients and you're a consultant or you're a coach and you're taking on everything that they're telling you and you're making it about you, I mean, that doesn't serve them. It doesn't serve you,
Yeah.
but it will drain you. And so, when we can shift things like that to understand it, or if you, spoiler alert, you're going to make several mistakes that are going to cost you some money as an entrepreneur. I'm just, you just are. And then you understand better. Hopefully we learn lessons, right? But what happens for a lot of people is then it makes them question themselves. It makes them, so then you have to work through that. Or if you are a people pleaser, right? And you figured that out, and all of a sudden you don't want to delegate to your team, or you don't understand how to delegate. I know one of my things was when I was younger and not as knowing, let's just say that, not as aware, I had this, multi-million-dollar trade show sales company. And here I am in my, 30s. And I would look at other people who were doing the same thing I was doing, and they would have an office manager, and they would have a warehouse manager, and they would have a show manager. And I'd be like, why would I pay somebody to do that when I knew how to do all this?
Wow.
and
Yeah.
I'll just do it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a lot older and wiser now, and I'm going to tell you,
Yeah.
if I don't like it, even if I can do it, I'm going to
Yes.
hire somebody to do it. And if I don't know how to do it, I'm going to hire somebody to do it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right? I
Absolutely.
mean, but I was just doing it all, which is why I was such a workaholic.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
luckily, as trade show sales, it's a seasonal thing. So it wasn't 12 months out of the year. I would probably not physically be here on this earth any longer because I would have driven myself to the ground. So I did have off time.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, again, things will come up in our face, like what we haven't healed, what we
Yeah.
haven't looked at, what we weren't even aware of.
Well, it's interesting that you describe that because again, I can certainly attest to that. Being an entrepreneur, I've only been in business now for 4.5 years, almost 5 years, and I'm excited about that 5 year mark because there's so much stats that they actually kind of tie to that 5 year mark. But I do think that you're absolutely right about that.
Are you a consultant or coach who spends too much time trying to find the right tools or the right systems for your business? If you're like I was early in my consulting business, I spent a lot of time researching which project management tool, CRM system, website building and hosting company, accounting software, and other tools that were best for my business. I also spent time creating email templates and even contract templates for clients and vendors. Chances are you're either doing the same or you've done the same. My name is Patrice Davis, and I'm the CEO of a consulting firm, GrantsWorks. I'm also the owner of Ready, Set, Go Consult, a consulting business accelerator, and the host of the Age Has No Limit podcast. I'm here to tell you about the Ultimate Consultants and Freelancer Starter Kit. The kit is a curated list of tools of the trade, templates, and other resources you'll need to run your business. It even includes the six-figure proposal template, the one I've used to win 5 and 6-figure engagements. There's also a fluff-free summary of what it takes to build and grow your consulting or coaching business. Here's the thing. On average, consultants, freelancers, and other independent service providers work up to 65 hours per week. I created the kit myself because I know it can help you save time from hours of research and trial and error. It's what I would have wanted when I started my consulting firm in 2020. Here's the thing. You can't grow a successful business when your foundation isn't stable and when your delivery and systems are chaotic and outdated. Click the link below to learn more about the starter kit or visit readysetgoconsult.com/starter kit. You'll be happy you did. As a friendly reminder, if you're listening to us on your favorite streaming platform, please download this and any of our past episodes so you can listen on the go. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe. Now back to the podcast.
It's interesting, though, that you also explain that you've lived actually been all over the country. Because I remember thinking, she moved from San Antonio, Texas, to the Pacific Northwest. And I was thinking to myself, what would make someone make that transition? Completely different environment, completely different type of climate. But I think that because you've been so many places that now I may not understand the reason why. I'm certainly not asking
Well,
that.
I'll give you a big one.
Yeah,
right?
what is it?
We were almost 109 degrees last summer.
Yeah.
Once you live, like my house, as I said, I had an electric bill of like $300 a month.
Wow.
And the house wasn't even being cooled because it was just so hot.
Yeah.
And I just went, I'm getting too old to live in this kind of weather.
Yeah.
Like, I can't do this. I mean, yeah. And so I live in the sunniest place in Washington.
Wow.
So it's not like I'm missing, I think when people think of Washington, they just think of like the sprinkles all the time, and it's gray. And it's like, no, it's not like that here.
Mm-hmm.
Not that there's not rain or little sprinkles here or there, but
I
like rain, so I'm okay with it. In fact, I was just having a conversation, and my sister lives in this area, and she is one of my best friends.
Yeah.
The pandemic, I think, really changed things for people. And I think we're now hitting that mark for, 3 years or, 4 years since it started, 3 years since it ended. It didn't end, but you know what I'm saying, like that the quarantines and everything were lessened and everything. I think we're really seeing how traumatized people are around this, what has happened, and people really have to do a lot of I think during the quarantine, people had to do a lot of soul searching, but I think it's even more so now. because it's coming up to people. And when Patrice goes, I'm hitting that 5-year mark, and I'm glad to, if you can hit a 2-year mark as an entrepreneur, that's the victory.
Oh, wow. That's good to know.
I think the statistics show that, I mean, it's a scary amount of people don't
survive the year, past 2 years.
Make it, because you'll make mistakes. You have to look at things. You have to own things.
Yeah.
And not like own them. Like, I'm not saying like make yourself accountable, but then people have to look at like, oh my gosh, I approach things as a victim. I never knew this about myself. I mean, you learn things about yourself and you're like, I need to do something about this. And what ends up happening, especially for the ones who are very driven, is that they push.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's no room to be able to give themselves the time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Either work with themselves or to take the time to look at themselves. Yeah. And it's funny. I just had a coaching client that gave me did a video testimonial for me, right? And she has been in many different programs and worked with many different coaches since she decided to become, and I think she's also like in her 5 years or less. And she said, I wish that Brenda had been my first coach instead of my last. Because I feel like I would have had a foundation and I wouldn't have made some of the reactionary choices or the, attracted the wrong things. It would have been different had I started off with her. And I was like, oh, what a great thing to say. Thank you. But I was like, yeah, that's the thing. We realize where the cracks are in the foundation.
Yeah.
When you start.
Well, so that kind of also makes me think about, your specialty. And that specialty, I want to make sure that I say it correctly. And that is, you are a ThetaHealing Master. And so please, describe what Theta Healing is and why does it work? I think I remember you mentioned it could be something where you can address some challenges within 90 minutes. So would love to learn a little bit about that.
Well, it's instantaneous how Theta Healing works. So what it does is it's called Theta Healing because as a practitioner, I go into a theta brainwave, right? So we know that there are different brainwaves. Like Patrice and I are talking, this is a beta brainwave. If anybody's ever heard of Reiki, which that's a modality that's been around for, like since the 60s or 70s, most people are familiar with that energy. That goes into an alpha brainwave. So we have beta and then alpha. We have the ones below it, but I don't need to teach a class on this, right? So it's beta that we're at here. There's alpha and then there's theta and then delta and gamma. So theta brainwave is actually that sweet point where we can put ourselves into a meditative state. And it actually is known to it's why Tibetan monks go to monasteries and stay there forever, right? Because they are attempting to achieve that theta brainwave because it really allows us to connect and allow us to be one with whoever our higher power is, right? And again, I was raised Catholic, so I'll tell you, I don't know the Bible, right? Because I was raised Catholic. But I do know that in the Bible, it does talk about in that co-creation with God. So when you can go into a theta brainwave, you can be in that co-creation with whoever your higher power is.
Yes.
And we bypass the mind, the subconscious mind, and make changes on a cellular level because any traumas that you have, any forgiveness, any non-forgiveness, resentment, rejection, regret that you have, it's all held on a cellular level. But here's the thing, it's not just about ours. It's what we've inherited. Because sometimes folks, we look in the mirror and go, oh my God, I'm becoming my mother or my father. You know what I'm saying? Like we reach it, like we strive not to be that, and then we automatically are. And that's because of our DNA. It's what's held on a cellular level. We, we have what's happened in this lifetime. And that affects us cellularly. So when you actually make the changes, so people will say, I'll say it works with beliefs, and people will say, I believe this. And I'll say, when you make a statement like, this is what I believe. What you're actually telling me is this is how I think and this is how I feel. Because beliefs are actually held on a cellular level. And for most of us, we would be shocked to know the beliefs that we have. Because that's why that's the captain, I say it's the captain of the ship. And that's why people end up creating that definition of insanity, like repeating the same behavior and expecting a different outcome, because our beliefs on a cellular level, our traumas, our resentments are driving that, and our conscious and subconscious aren't even aware of it.
Yeah, yeah. So that reminds me of a book, and I was actually trying to think of the book, and I was trying to figure, but it'll come to me, I'm sure. Where the author, and I know you know who he is, DiNaprio, I think it's something the habit of being yourself. I know you know what I'm talking about. I can't remember the name of the author. It'll come to me. But in that book, he does actually talk about one of the ways, basically the type of meditation, or the way that he enters into meditation. And he actually does spell out the different types of brain waves, and why tapping into the beta brainwave activity, brain wavelength, so to speak, is going to be one of the most effective ways to actually achieve what one wants to achieve when it comes to, making the improvements or enhancements that they want to make as a result of meditation. I'm not sure if that,
in theta healing, it's like, it happens just like this, right?
Yeah.
So it's looking at what's on it. So for almost 20. So people can tell me what's going on in their lives. I know what questions to ask and go, okay, these are the beliefs. But with theta healing, what we do, which was what makes it so powerful, is that we use kinesiology to discover what your beliefs are.
Wow. Okay.
So I'll say, something like, maybe you have a belief that you are obligated to be undermined, right?
Yeah.
Maybe. Wow. And what that means is, an obligation means that you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
So then if I have a belief that I'm obligated to be undermined, then I'm going to attract people, situations, places, things that are constantly reinforcing that I'm being undermined.
Absolutely.
And then I'm getting frustrated and I don't know what to do. And I'm attempting to change it. And I'm thinking about things and all of that. But it's like when you can actually just discover that you have the belief.
Yeah.
And then through theta healing, change it on a cellular level, and it stops happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like instantaneously. And so with theta healing, what we do is we muscle test to discover what your beliefs are. People are always, I always say, people are always, they're fascinated by that, and to begin with, right? That's muscle testing. Because if you've ever gone to a chiropractor, you've done the arm thing and you know about muscle testing.
Yes. Yeah.
Because the body knows.
Yeah. Interesting. So we say muscle testing. You're not even talking about a mental muscle.
We discover what beliefs need to be changed or then we go in a physical muscle testing. Yes.
Okay. So we're gonna.
And then
go ahead.
We have the list of what needs to change. We have the list of what needs to change. Go up, and I, as a practitioner, go up into a theta brainwave.
Oh, you as the practitioner. Okay, interesting. Okay.
Because and again, this is a very complementary modality, but it's also very respectful modality. So when we discover what needs to be changed, then, like, say if Patrice was my client, I would be like, Patrice, here's what we found. Would you like to change those?
Yeah.
Because they're going to tell me yes or no.
Yeah.
Right. And the reason that I ask her that here, like putting you behind the curtain, is because her mind needs to say yes. Now, if it doesn't, then we won't do it, right? Like, but if she says yes, then her brain goes, oh, Patrice wants these.
Yeah.
So then we do the work, right? It takes just a minute. And then we re-muscle test. We retest to confirm that it's changed. So again, the brain gets to see the muscle testing like, oh, it's changed. Okay. But it's already changed, like energetically, cellularly, but then the brain also buys into it. So because of the muscle testing, and then things just change. And it is, I always say that, if you want to be confirmed and validated for what you do for a living, don't become a theta healer, because what it does is it allows it to be like as if it's always been.
So you don't
right?
know if it's really
So
what
you're not in,
yeah.
you do not realize as a human
Yeah.
being what all you keep in your head going, I need to act happy. I need to make good decisions. I mean, like all of these things that we tell ourselves,
Yeah.
those just go away. People feel lighter. They feel focused. They will start to tell me, opportunities coming to them. So I'll tell you a funny story about a client I had one time. She did my 90-minute intro session. This was back in the day before the internet. And we had met like at a networking, professional networking group. And she had this session with me. And I always say you have complete anonymity with me because I never remember a session after it's done.
Yeah.
I'm going
Wow.
to tell you like it gets done and it's gone because it's been healed. It's gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Wow.
she, I see her the next month, right? After she's had this session. And, just as I say with anybody that I see, like, how's it going? Like, how are you doing? And she looked at me and she goes, yeah, I don't think that session worked. I said, really? Okay. Like, I know it does. So I was just like,
Yeah.
oh, hey, well, so what's new? Like, again, like, I don't take it personal. Like,
Yeah.
again, I've done enough work on myself that I know it's not about me.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
that's okay. I don't have to take it personally. I don't have to be insulted. I don't know. So I just went, oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, what's going on? So what's new? Anything new? So she had moved. She had a
Yeah.
boyfriend. She had gotten a dog.
Yeah.
She had done a musical performance. By the time she's like telling me all this stuff, I was like, wait a minute. Like in my mind, I go, wait a minute. This woman lived like in the same place for like 6 years and she was miserable and she wanted to move and she hadn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
She hadn't been in a relationship for 10 years.
Yeah.
And then I was like, and wait a minute, she'd always wanted a dog and never and got one. And then
Yeah.
and then I thought, wait a minute, I kept doing that. Wait a minute. Like, so I must have been like looking at her, but I'm listening, I'm thinking while she's talking, and I'm like, we did something on stage fright, I thought.
Oh, okay.
Like performance anxiety. And she's telling me about this vocal performance that she had done. And she's saying all this, and I'm listening to her, and I looked at her and I went, wow, that sounds amazing. I'm so happy for you.
Yeah.
And she looked at me and she went, oh, yeah, good work.
Yes.
But see, she had all this fear and she had all these stories and she had all these, beliefs and trauma that had prevented her from making change in her life. And when it shifted, and it was easy. Like she was talking about it like, and I've done this and I'm so happy. And, and I was just like, yeah, that's how it's supposed to be. Right. And that's the thing is that we're so used to, just like with Patrice, like going, oh, you go into a theta brainwave. It's like, yeah, you just show, you get to be the client. You don't have to do a lot, but then it's as if it's always been. But I'll tell you what happens. I get a lot of referrals, right? It's not that people are like, well, they are now, right? Because again, I've made some changes within myself that allow people to really recognize and be aware of what I do for them, right? I had something around that, I'm sure, that I had to change. It's been, I've made so many changes, so I can't tell you when and where, but a lot of times it's like people going, especially with women, they'll be like, you look younger. Did you change your skincare routine? Because we don't realize how much tension we hold in our faces with everything that we do, right? Or they'll be like, I always kiddingly would say that I would go to a networking meeting and somebody would want to have a coffee chat with me, we'd meet for coffee and I'd be like, it's with females. I'm sorry, ladies, I'm just going to say this. And I would look at the woman and go, well, kind of what I do. Do you have any questions? What can I answer for you? And they would always say, oh, my husband needs to work with you. And I'd be like, oh, well, isn't that interesting? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I heard that. And I would say, well, the world is our mirror.
Yeah.
And if you want people to change, then typically it's the change within ourselves that needs to be mirrored out. And that's what Theta Healing does, is it makes it really easy. And I can't tell you how many women came to me that made that statement, that then inevitably within 30 days, their husbands were like, look, because men apply, they approach things differently. And they were like, I saw a huge difference in my wife. And she said it was just like, the only thing that she had done was a session with you. And so I'm thinking it's pretty good. So I'd like to have one with you. And I'd be like, great. So they would get what they wanted, but then it was just so much more because they did it for themselves first.
So So here's a question about that. And by the way, guys, if anyone wants to learn more about Brenda and her forgiveness packet, which we're going to talk about later, I want to make sure I call it, it's the Freedom Through Forgiveness Workbook and audios. You can definitely learn more about her at brendabbailey.com, or you can follow her on Instagram at Shatter Your Income Ceiling. And I like that quite a bit. I was actually trying to pull up your Instagram account. I'm going to follow you. So would love to find out a little bit more though about what you think being an entrepreneur and that is aging, your thoughts, just your general thoughts about that aging and being an entrepreneur. I have my opinions about it. And I've also read some data about it as I was preparing for one of the a previous episode, but I'd love to learn from you, your thoughts about aging as an entrepreneur.
Well, I think hopefully you do. All of the most successful entrepreneurs that I know, and I've belonged to networking groups that have had, you had to be 7 figures to be in, or you had to be in upper 6 figures, and they all have support.
Yeah.
And not support in their business, but support for them personally. They either have a healer that they work with, or they have, somebody on retainer, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what we get older and we realize that's not a waste of money. It actually makes me more money.
Yeah, absolutely.
And because I get out of the way, or I show up in a better way, or so I feel like that as you get older, you realize that you don't have to do it all. You delegate more, hopefully.
Yeah.
If you stay in the game. So if you stay as an entrepreneur, you realize that you've got to delegate, you've got to, I had and pay somebody a lot to be able to pick up that slack.
Yeah.
And then to just stay in your lane.
Yeah.
We cannot be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
I think especially as women, as mothers, women do that, and then they bring that into their business. That's like, stay in your lane, collaborate, refer.
Yeah.
And build relationships. I think the older you get, or the older I've gotten, the more relationships I have, the more I've been, I think also too, I've said no to people, like, not my person.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because the older I get, I think the more I value the importance of relationships. But different types of relationships. I think, when you're younger, you're interested in, someone that you're maybe attracted to. And then of course, there are the relationships you may have with your children if you're a mother, or the relationships you have with your partner or your spouse. And obviously your work relationships, I find, and maybe it's because I'm an entrepreneur who needs to work on that aspect of entrepreneurship, which is relationship building. It's become, I think, and it goes back to what you were saying about what you believe. And once you actually are clear about what you believe, and sometimes understand how that belief can hinder you, and then you acknowledge that belief. Oh, wow, I'm starting to see some of the things that you're saying. Then it's easier for you to actually make the change, because at least you acknowledge to yourself the belief. You can now figure out, okay, why do I believe that? So that you can actually start addressing that belief if it's something that is hindering you. And that's exactly what I've done. I've actually looked into my thoughts about relationships, different types of relationships, what I used to like to term as, authentic relationships, and realizing that a business relationship can be authentic in a different way, but it's still authentic. So that's interesting that you said that.
And here's the thing: what I do for a living cuts a lot of time. Like, I'm all about I'm very effective and efficient with what I do for a living. And the reason that I do theta healing is because I don't need to know the why. I don't need to know why you're doing what you're doing. I know what needs to shift so that you'll stop doing it. And you don't have, I think that that's one thing. As you get older, you don't have to figure out everything. Like, that's what I've realized for myself, is I don't have to have the answer to everything. We pay people for that. We hire people for that. And the clearer we are, as far as like all of our traumas and our beliefs that are held on a cellular level, the better choices we make on who we support, who we attract to support us and
Yeah.
who we hire to support us.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so funny, my VAs, right? So I have a VA team. I'm one of those that feels like and I'm a very organized person, but when it comes to them and like the bigger projects that we work on, the new projects that we work on, I often feel like that I'm not that organized with them. And yet every time I talk to them, or I just give them things through Google Drive, right? And they just do it, right? That's what I made a good choice on my team, right? And the firm that I work with, the agency that I work with, and they just take care of it. And I trust them implicitly. But I'll say to them occasionally, like when I meet with one of them, like we're starting a new project, I'll be like, I apologize if I've been a little scattered. And they always look at me and go, you are like, you're like, we love you. Like, don't ever think like you. And I'm like, are people like worse than me? And they'll be like, oh, you have no idea. And I'd be like, oh, okay. And I was talking to my social media manager about a week ago, and I was saying something, and he goes, "You are so, you're just like you're one of our favorites of the agency." That. I was like, "Am I?" And he's like, "You're just so kind, and how you deliver things, and you don't throw things at the last minute and expect us to like you give us time, and you're always cool, calm, and collected, even if a mistake is, you're like, yes, we love you." Like, oh, okay. But that's the thing. It's like, I'm like, okay, like I'm thinking I'm showing up like a hot mess, and like they're like, oh no, they're not. I'm like, oh,
Well, but it's interesting because then if that was your belief,
that's how I felt.
Yes, got it.
That wasn't my belief. That's how I felt.
Okay, interesting. Now, I'd love for you to tell us about, your freedom through forgiveness. We did start the conversation talking about forgiveness and how it can actually, help us achieve the freedom, whatever freedom it is that we're trying to achieve. Tell me about the workbook and the audios. What does a person get after they, actually complete the workbooks and listen to the audios, and where can they find them?
Right. Well, when it's freedom through forgiveness. So it's freedom in the THRU forgiveness.com. It's www.freedomthroughforgiveness.com. And it's free, guys. So just know it's free. It gives you a little taste of what Theta Healing is like. So what it is it's a workbook that talks about forgiveness and how I teach this modality as well. I always say, tell me what you do for a living, and I'll tell you how you can implement Theta Healing into it.
Yeah.
Whether it's working with clients, it's working on yourself, right? Or working with your children or family, or a spouse, you know what I mean? It's like, I always believe that every woman in the world needs to learn Theta Healing, but men too, but I'm a gal, so I'll just say it from there.
Yeah.
But what it does is the workbook allows you to start to make forgiveness lists. It gives you different ways. Like, do you want to do it chronologically? Do you want to do it by person? Like making a list of or like say yourself, what do I need to forgive myself for?
Yeah.
And then what the audios do is once you start working in the workbook, the audios will walk you through on what you need to do for it, but it'll also do a session for you around forgiveness. And all you have to do is listen to it, and it'll clear it for you by just simply saying yes.
Yeah. So where do you teach this? Because I remember learning that, you don't just provide this service one-on-one, and I'm not sure if you even still provide one-on-one service, coaching services. But I did see that you do teach, you do speak. Where are some of the places where, a person can hear you speak about this?
Well, I teach, right? We'll just start off with teaching. I teach virtually.
Yeah.
That was one of the beautiful things about the pandemic, that it allowed us, right? Because we had these ironclad written agreements that we could only teach in person. And then the pandemic, they changed it. And then they just like, oh, we're staying with this. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
So we can all be in the comfort of our home, right? So that is, I believe that's like ultimate Theta Healing. .com, possibly. I can give you that link. And it's also, I believe it's in my website. Like you can look up classes on my website and find out about, because I teach like what I call prerequisite, like the beginning classes. I do it in a bundle. There's 4 classes. It's 1 class a month for 4 months. And I do that at the beginning of the year. So that has already passed. And then I do upper level. I teach a lot of upper level. That's why I get to be called a ThetaHealing Master, all completely by accident. I just love to take classes, and when I find something that I like, I take all the classes. So that's how I happened. They all of a sudden came up with this title, and I was one of the first 9 in the world to become a ThetaHealing Master, and I didn't even mean to, right?
Yeah.
And then there's another level that's called Certificate of Science, which I'm 1 class short, and they're always like, you're not a Certificate of Science. I'll be like, nah. I mean, because it's really, titles don't mean anything to me. So I was just like, no. I mean, it's nice that I can spout that I was one of the first 9, but no, so I teach it virtually, and I speak, a lot of times I speak on podcasts as well as I do I'm going to speak like at a trauma summit and like a women's entrepreneur summit. So I do a lot of the virtual summits. I do also do some of the conferences like for dowsing, which is a little, they've brought me in as speakers as well, but really speaking live, not as much since the pandemic, right? I just haven't gotten back into the swing of that, which I'm hoping will change in 2025. That's kind of one of my things that is kind of like in my circle of awareness, so to speak, that I'm going, maybe I'm ready to get back on a plane and start going places to speak. But I just don't, I do it mostly on podcast and virtual summits.
Okay. Now, and we have about 4 questions left while I have you. So I just want to ask you something that's really important. Now, you say that you think that we have an income ceiling. I would love to learn a little bit more about that, because I'm learning that, or I've learned that, I've been exposed to that concept. And so what do you think typically creates that ceiling? And how does one actually, break through that ceiling, so to speak?
Well, a lot has to do with religion or organized religion, right? A lot of people believe, they have no idea that they have this belief, and practically everybody does, that they need to be poor to be closer to God.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Because again, if you look in history, right, a lot of times when religion was at the forefront, and you couldn't tell the difference between, sometimes we still see that, but we won't go there, but you can't tell that there is a, line between religion and government. And so when religion was really powerful, a lot of people, they were told that's how they pretty much controlled the masses, was like, let's keep you poor, let's keep you dependent, and you give us all your earthly belongings, right? So that's a belief that we inherit. That's a belief that we came into this world with.
Interesting.
And culturally, like I typically, if I know what your cultural and religious background are, there are just certain beliefs I know you got. That's because, did you grow up in a family where, you were, did your parents struggle with money? More than likely, these are things that you're going to have to overcome. Were your parents poor handlers of money, right? These are things that you'll have to overcome. So we've either, been exposed to it, we've inherited it, either through family or church.
That's a great point.
Even like for myself, I always didn't say, was raised, as a Hispanic Catholic, right? That's how I was raised. And a lot of it is that you don't talk about money, and you don't show that you have money. Like, who do you think you are? That was one of the things that I really had to work with as I had became more financially successful. I remember not talking about the first house that I bought, or the one that I bought that had the pool and like, I didn't tell people what neighborhood I lived in. I didn't, because it was that kind of stuff that I had been raised with, although I did it, right? But I was still, it's like, when do you know that? And, even as a healer, because that's what I'm considered, healers aren't supposed to make a lot of money.
That's a good point.
That, or that starving artist, or that servitude healer. It's like, those are just things societal, right? That are around. So that's where we all get it from. And then you have these unrealistic expectations of these, which we don't see it as much. And they term it like bro marketing, where it was look at my house, look at my car, looky. And it's like, I think most of us really discovered that that was a lot of BS. So there was a lot of other things beneath that you're like, okay, right? Like looks good on a picture, right? But
that YouTube ad, yeah.
So then, what can we trust and what can we do? And we get it from so many different places, even like on TV. And I mean, oh my gosh, even if sometimes I have couple of nephews, right? Or they're really my best friends' kids at 10 and 12. And sometimes, like, even when you watch like some of the cartoons like that you used to watch like as a kid, and you're like, oh my God, like that's what again, for better or for worse, I love like a lot of the newer Disney and the messages that it gives to children, right? Because that's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're framing those minds. Now, what does an age has no limit life mean to you?
Well, one, I would hope that I don't look my age, right?
Yes.
I'm going to be 60 and
oh, wow. Yeah. Wow.
So I think it's genetics and it's ThetaHealing, folks. But I think that I don't look at something and say, "Oh, I'm too old for this," or "It's too late for that."
Yeah.
Until I'm buried in the dirt in the ground, right, or cremated, right. I'm dust in an urn, so to speak. It's never too late.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are no limits to that. It's never too late. And again, I think in this day and age, and especially like with TikTok and social media, we're seeing so much of older people achieving things at, because I can remember, as a kid, right? And maybe again, I'm showing my age, thinking like somebody, like 50 or 60 was so old and acted so old.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, back then, I mean, maybe it was our perception, but they did. They really did.
Because like you said, you hit a certain age and you had to start acting old. And it's like, luckily exactly. I was raised by a mother who's very young at heart.
Yeah.
And she didn't fall into that. Like she was in her own way. She did some things differently than traditionally my family did. Yeah. And so I think that also just being young at heart, and again, dressing our age, but still dressing youthful, that kind of thing, knowing, like, I don't want to look like that pathetic old lady is not dressing her age. You know what I'm saying? Or like, you're too old for that. But just, there's not being a limit because of my age.
Yeah, absolutely. In other words, the age shouldn't be the limitation. Now, if you have a bucket list, and now that I know that you've traveled all over the country, except for 2 states, and you've probably also traveled internationally quite a bit as well, or so travel obviously, is I'm not sure, maybe it is something that you still want to do. And there's a country on your list, but what's one thing that you haven't done that you're just itching to do?
Find the love of my life.
Oh, interesting. I like that.
Because I think, when I married before, I don't think I understood what love was, and people always say there's that oops, the first marriage is always the oops. I mean, if you're still in your first marriage, God bless you, and y'all grew together and everything, right? But the starter marriage, right? And I think that your first marriage is always the starter marriage, right? And you either, can grow with it or not. But I feel like it's like, I've achieved a lot of things. But when we're talking about, and I have great friends and I have a great support system, but I just have never made it a priority to be with that person, but as I've learned to love myself more and accept myself more, it's like, okay,
yeah. And that's going to happen because you just said the very important thing, that you learn to love yourself more and accept yourself more. And as a result, you'll attract what you're ready for. So that sounds fantastic. And I know that's going to happen. And tell us one more time where the audience can find out more about you, about the Freedom Through Forgiveness workbook. And I didn't realize there was a third website. So tell us all the websites where we can.
So BrendaBBailey.com, www.BrendaBBailey.com is how you can find me. And there's also an opportunity where, and I'll just give you, here's a second website. It's Chat with Brenda B, www.Chat with Brenda B. That's a 30-minute free chat. Like, ask me any questions about theta healing, or, the 90-minute intro session, or how, or, I need my garage painted. Do you know somebody in my area? I mean, I know a lot of people, right? So I always say that if I can't help you, I know somebody who can, right? Or somebody who knows somebody. That's free, want to do that. And then freedom through forgiveness. So freedom, and then through is THRU.
Well, I first of all, I really, really thank you for your time. Once again, I say it all the time. I probably oversay it, which is fine. I'd rather oversay that than many other things. But I do thank you for your time. And what I really liked about our conversation is, number one, all the things that I've learned, the discussions around forgiveness and how we can actually achieve freedom by forgiving ourselves and forgiving others. Also learned a lot about how it sounds like you make a decision and you just move forward. I mean, you've just moved from, is it Southwest Texas? I'm not sure.
It's Central Texas.
Moved from Central Texas to Pacific Pacific Northwest. And because you were like, I don't want to deal with this weather anymore. And so, just love that you absolutely are a wonderful example that, age has no limit. That's something that I am committed to doing and to showing and to sharing with everyone every single week. So thanks again. You are an excellent example that indeed age has no limit. Thank you so much, Brenda.
Thank you, Patrice.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Age Has No Limit podcast. Except for when we have quarterly breaks, we release a new episode each week featuring people who decided to live a no-limit life, or featuring tips or lessons learned from me as I create my own no-limit life. By the way, don't forget to subscribe. I look forward to sharing our next episode with you. And just remember, age has no limit.